Hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Michelle, and today I want to share with you a different perspective on homeschooling. So joining me today is my husband, Jacob, and I thought it would be nice to show the partner's perspective, or the husband, spouse, whoever is with you during the homeschooling journey, because as I am the main educator in our house, he still plays a vital role in our homeschool. So I wanted to talk about kind of his impressions with homeschooling, starting out and where we're at now. So I thought we would start with kind of our own background with education and our own knowledge of homeschooling before coming into it. So I was in the public school system my entire education. I was actually in many different school districts. We moved around a lot. And my experience with homeschooling, I never met anyone that was homeschooling growing up. I did, as an adult, encounter a family that homeschooled, but it was for mainly religious reasons, so it was that type of homeschooling environment. So what about you? What was your experience growing up, education-wise?
I was in parochial schools from preschool throughout my entire life. All of my schooling was in parochial schools.
So religious-based schools?
Yeah, religious schools. From preschool through high school, it was in the Missouri Synod school system, the Missouri Synod Lutheran schools. Had friends that were in public schools, had friends that were homeschooled when I was growing up. Yeah.
Now it's interesting, we come from different educational backgrounds, but we definitely see the pros and cons in both, private, public, but we hadn't had a lot of experience with actual homeschooling. So going into it, it's something I definitely never considered for our children. It's something we never actually talked about or brought up prior to the pandemic. The pandemic, I think, changed a lot of things. And for me personally, I have a video on why we chose to homeschool our children. If you're new here, I have a almost 9-year-old, 5-year-old, 2-year-old. We're currently homeschooling the almost 9-year-old and 5-year-old. But I do have a video I'll link up above that explains kind of how we came to that choice. But I would say, for me personally, it was not that drastic of a choice because we've kind of always done gap schooling. So during the summer, I would work with my oldest on things I thought she needed to work on, something that the public school missed or something she was behind in. So we've always kind of encountered some type of homeschooling. And I was the one that taught my oldest to read when she was little, and we did preschool at home, different things like that. So the concept was not new to me. And I've watched YouTube videos for years, but never actually made the transition into homeschooling ourselves until the pandemic happened. So I did approach Jacob on this and say, this is something I'm thinking about. I gotta say, your first reaction was probably shock, right? Like, I remember you saying, I need a minute. When I first said, I think we should homeschool, you said, I'm gonna need some time, right? I remember that's what you said.
Yeah. So my internal monologue was something to the effect of, oh my God, we're gonna have the weird kids.
And I think that's a normal assumption a lot of people have. And I think something that plays into yours is education is very important in your family.
Yeah. So both of my parents are teachers. My mother was a preschool through first grade teacher, and my dad has taught various age groups from junior high and high school. So that's always been, institutional education has always been a big deal in my household growing up, and in particular because my dad was the first person in my family, on my dad's side of the family, to get a 4-year college degree and then a master's degree. So the desire to do one's best to further their education and learn as much as they can, not just for social mobility, but just to better themselves, was always a big deal.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point too. In my family, I was the first to attend college, and it was a big deal. Learning was important to me. It was a way to change not only myself, my environment, my outlook at life, So education was always very important, I would say, to us. And the only means we knew about that would be the public school setting, I would say. So back to how you felt when I first brought up the topic. You were afraid that our kids would be the weird kids, which is funny because even when they were in public school, they were the weird kids. But past that initial shock, what were some of your concerns?
Well, so when I was growing up, like I said, I was in parochial schools. In preschool through like fourth grade, class sizes were actually pretty decent. We had about 20 or so kids in the classes, but from fifth grade on, the class sizes got considerably smaller, and the opportunity for meaningful relationships and I think more genuine interaction with diverse groups of folks shrunk significantly, and I didn't want my own kids to miss out on the opportunities for both meaningful relationship, and when I say meaningful relationship, I mean deep meaningful relationship that isn't forced upon someone. Oh, hey, you're in a class of 6. This person's going to have to be your friend. Otherwise, you're dealing with all kinds of BS.
Oh, that must have been dating really fun.
So you know, I didn't want my kids to have to deal with that. And then the homeschool kids, you know, at least the ones that I encountered from my neighborhood and other groups I was a part with, like the social emotional.
So this would have been homeschool in the 90s.
Yes, this would have been homeschool in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Yeah. The social emotional development of some of these homeschool kids was really sad.
Yeah.
Like
so I guess the point is you came into these with these preconceived notions, which I think a lot of us do. The big questions about diverse groups, and it's funny how you say your smaller class sizes, that was a concern for you. Well, a concern for me in the public school was the classes got bigger and bigger and bigger, and it was so easy to get lost within those class sizes.
Yeah, so from my perspective, having a larger, and I think this is part of the reason why I enjoyed college so much, was having larger classes. You got to be more intentional with the people that you wanted to be around, and everyone else was just somebody else. You didn't have to put much time or energy into it. But when you're dealing with the same small group of people every single day for an entire school year, you have to make it work, or you're the weird kid.
And I can understand the concern with that, because when you're talking about homeschool groups, you're kind of creating that environment where you can have different people from different backgrounds, but it's going to be necessarily a smaller group of people that you're kind of forced to interact with. So, and that was one of our concerns. Even one of my concerns going into homeschooling was the socialization aspect, which I think is a big thing. Most people have an issue with homeschooling because, like I said, we were new to this. We don't know anyone in the area that was homeschooling at the time. We have never really encountered a family that chose this that wasn't for religious reasons. So it was new to us, and we weren't sure if our child would have the same outlet, because especially our oldest, really craves being around people. So we knew taking her out of that environment academically, it would probably benefit her. But social emotional growth, we were concerned about, definitely. That's something I was concerned with as well. So that's the initial reaction we had into it. Do you have any concerns about her general education? And I speak mainly to my oldest, because my 5-year-old's in like kindergarten, so.
So I think one of the biggest advantages for our family, and I'm gonna keep all my comments specific to what I've experienced.
Yeah, we can only speak to our own experience.
But the biggest advantage that I've seen is pacing. With both of our daughters that are doing homeschool, it's way easier for us to move at their pace to make sure that they're following along and tracking with the stuff that's being taught.
That was definitely an issue with our oldest in the public school system, because she went in farther ahead than the other kids, and was often like, her teacher would sit her next to the kids that needed help, and she'd be like a mini teacher. So she was never really challenged much, and she got this concept that school was easy. which really did not help her when she finally encountered challenging material for the first time. I would say second grade. It was difficult for her to transition through that. So, continue.
Yeah. Well, and even our younger daughter, I think that she's definitely one that is
In
very,
her own world.
well, she gets very passionate about things.
Yes.
And
She lives in the moment.
I get the feeling that in a public school setting, she would be spending a lot of time not in the classroom out of fear that she would be disruptive.
Yeah,
or
she would definitely
something.
have that problem with it, that our 5-year-old is the child that has to constantly be in motion. And she also has this thing where it seems like she's not paying attention because she's not looking directly at you. She'll be like playing with her toes or something, or climbing on the chair. Like, she's getting what you're saying, but she doesn't necessarily, like, eyes on me, bubble in your mouth kind of public school setting thing you would see. I would assume the teachers would assume because she's not staring at them, she's not paying attention.
I don't think that any mainline public school or even private school system is set up to deal with neurodivergent students.
Yeah, our 5-year-old is definitely neurodivergent. We haven't been able to have her tested because of her age. Her pediatrician does not really want to go down that avenue yet. And I don't think most pediatricians would actually go down that avenue until you start having behavioral issues in public school. So we'll continue with that journey as we go through it. But it's obvious the benefits our kids would get. Academically, it's more focused on them. It better meets their needs, especially with our 5-year-old who's, a wiggle worm. But she also has celiac disease, which is a concern. If you're new here, I have a lot of celiac disease videos as well. She has to have a 100% gluten-free diet. She gets very sick if she ingests a small amount of wheat, barley, or rye. So cross-contamination within the school would be a big issue. And the fact that we know children in the public school system who deal with things like peanut allergies and dairy allergies that have not been treated very well. They're very ostracized. Like, I once asked my oldest what happened to the kids during the school parties that had the food allergies, and she said they would either not come or they'd be put in a corner by themselves, and that's something I think is a big deal.
So all the other things that led up to our initial decision to homeschool aside, I'm still of the mindset that for our youngest daughter, there probably wouldn't have been a good setting for her in public schools.
And I think because gluten and celiac disease is so not widely understood that the teachers wouldn't know, the administration wouldn't know.
There's so many other assumptions and implicit bias that folks have around those things, and it doesn't help that media confuses some of those things
the fad dieting and stuff. And although we have personally never had a child in the public school system with a food allergy or autoimmune condition like celiac disease, we can make assumptions based on the things we know, and we're not comfortable sending her into an environment like that. So now we're about 3/4 of our year. We're almost done, actually. My oldest is wrapping up her curriculum. My 5-year-old is starting to read. So what are your thoughts now that you've seen the process? And I'd like to add that you are part of the process. On Wednesday mornings, he works with my 5-year-old with her work when he has the morning off because he works later in the day. But he also steps in with my oldest as well, because I think one of the things many people are hesitant with homeschool is math. And I was one of those people that was very hesitant because I did not have a good experience with it. And one nice thing is I can pull him in whenever I need help, and he can either help me figure out what they're trying to teach, or sometimes I will have him teach her the lesson, because it's good to get that multiple different perspectives, because I would say you're more naturally gifted with math and you're able to see the problem differently than I would approach it. So he does participate in our homeschool, and if I ever have questions that I'm mulling over or curriculum I'm trying to decide on, I will go to him, especially when it comes to things like math, we're doing multiplication now with my oldest, and I learned multiplication through simple memorization, math facts. I was never really taught what they were meant, and I was trying to get his idea because he came from a different, background in the private school systems. So he's there as a resource or a sounding board when I need it, and he does participate and knows the curriculum we're using. So after all that, what are your thoughts 3/4 of our year into it? Was it as bad as you thought it was going to be, or did it blow up?
Well, I'm just gonna have to live with my kids being weird.
Yeah, I mean, they were so weird before that.
And I know someone somewhere is like, wow, you really hate your kid. I know, I love my kid. I love both of my
We
girls,
like to say they're all
and
unique snowflakes.
they are definitely very unique. But as far as learning goes,
Well, I guess let's break it up
they're-
academically and
yeah,
then social, emotional.
Academically, I think both of our girls are tracking well and are still on pace, and some ways ahead of pace on where they would be in a standard public school classroom. I think that some of the social stuff, we have been able to augment that with some homeschool meetup groups that we're part of and things like that, and that helps. I think one of the hardest issues is kids within the same age range, because both of our girls are in between the ages of many of the other kids in their groups.
So it's like a schoolhouse setting where it's multiple ages within a group.
So the opportunity for some of the same age type developmental stuff that's
like
going on,
like peer-to-peer stuff.
I think that's still kind of lacking. However, they are developing meaningful relationships and seem to enjoy their time together and the opportunities that they have to do group learning projects and stuff together. I think that goes over well with them.
So if someone was to ask you, if you had any advice to the spouse of someone that is homeschooling or thinking about homeschooling, what advice would you give to them?
Oh.
Because I'll let you think about this for a minute when I speak. So I will say this, that although you did not think it was a good idea in the beginning, you thought public school would have been the better choice, you trusted me on this to lead us down this path, knowing that obviously I take our child's education very seriously and I'm hoping for the best. Although you disagreed with my choice, you still supported my choice. There was never a time when I was frustrated or having a hard day. You said, well, this is what you chose to do. So I will commend you on that you've always been supportive of the choice, even though you didn't think it was the right choice in the beginning.
Yeah, so I'm a firm believer that if you care about someone, you can have drastically different viewpoints on a lot of things.
And I think that's important, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to make this video, because you often see the dads saying, oh yeah, they're so gung-ho for homeschooling, or they want their spouse to do it. We had a different situation where I was gung-ho to do it, and he's like, I'm not sure.
But I think honestly, regardless of what type of education setting you are intending for your child, they're gonna have those experiences that are gonna make them feel like something got weird. Whether that's the social emotional stuff or feeling like they missed a concept in a classroom or something. No family, no parent is going to be able to have that perfect ideal situation for their child's learning. So I think ultimately all we can do is the best we can.
Yeah. And sometimes the best you can is sending them to public school. Sometimes that is the best choice.
And the other piece that I don't think we've really talked about yet in all this is we were in a situation where we were genuinely privileged enough where we could make the choice. Because there are folks that especially since we made our decision primarily with pandemic stuff in mind, there are folks that just did not have that as an option.
A good point that every family's decision is that family's decision.
Mm-hmm.
Our decision and the reasons we do it will not be the next family's. So I think it's definitely unique to every family and also unique to every child. Because our child's homeschooled now does not mean they will always be homeschooled. There might be a time when they re-enter the public school system, and that's fine. We're not here to debate whether homeschool or public school or private school are better. It's what's best for each of your families. That's something I think would be very good advice to send to parents who are considering making this, that it is definitely a difficult choice where you're, as parents, there's times when we're asked to make choices that affect the rest of our children's life. This is one of those choices, and it's difficult because it's all on you. Like, if you send your kid to public school and it doesn't go well and they don't learn well, you'll be like, oh, the institution sucks. Well, when they're at home with you and you're the main responsible person, then all eyes are on you, all fingers are pointing at you, and that can be a lot of pressure, and that can be really a difficult decision.
Yep. Yeah, yeah.
I so eloquently summed it up for you, right?
Well, I mean,
you can tell that I'm the
wish...
person that speaks right away, and Jacob is the type that mulls it all over in his head and then speaks. So yeah, it is a lot to take on. No matter where you live, there's different standards, but it's a decision, and it's a difficult decision that I don't think you should take lightly. But I would say that sums up kind of where you're at, right, on this. We had the initial shock, oh my God, are we really doing this? And we made it through most of the year. There's some benefits, definitely some cons as well, but right now it's the right choice and it's working well for our family. Yep. All right, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, leave them down below. See you guys next time.